Mr. Chair and members of the Commission, we are now live.
Good evening and welcome to the March 22nd, 2023 meeting of the Montgomery County Historic Preservation Commission. My name is Bob Sutton and I'm the chair, and I would like to have commissioners introduce themselves starting on my left, and staff introduce themselves as well. Thank you.
Jeffrey Haynes.
Karen Burdett.
Julie Pelletier.
Michael Galway.
Commissioner Doman.
Michael Kine, Historic Preservation Staff.
Rebecca Ballo, Historic Preservation Staff.
Dan Bruckert, Historic Preservation Staff.
John Lieberts, Historic Preservation Staff.
Thank you. The first item on our agenda are historic area work permits, and have the permits been advertised?
Yes, they were advertised in the March 8th edition of the Washington Times.
Thank you. We believe that the permits that are before us can be expedited. But first, if there's anyone who wants to speak in opposition to any of these, if you would let us know, we would appreciate it. So the first one is item number 1A at 7218 Maple Avenue, Tacoma Park. Item 1B at 10013 Stony Brook Drive, Silver Spring. 1D at 7421 Cedar Avenue, Tacoma Park. 1E at 7501 Carroll Avenue, Tacoma Park. 1F at 5701 Achille Lane, Rockville. And 1G at 7200 Maple Avenue, Tacoma Park.
Mr. Chair, hearing no objections, I move that we approve the following historic area work permits in accordance with the staff reports based upon the record before us, in consideration of the recommendations of the local advisory panels, and including the conditions recommended by staff. HOP number 1020137 at 7218 Maple Avenue, Tacoma Park. HOP number 1003027 revision at 10013 Stony Brook Drive, Silver Spring. HOP number 1022682 at 4719 Cumberland Avenue, Chevy Chase. HOP number 1023017 at 7421 Cedar Avenue, Tacoma Park. HOP number 1023061 at 7501 Carroll Avenue, Tacoma Park. HOP number 1023063 at 5701 Achille Lane, Rockville. And HOP number 982698 revision at 7200 Maple Avenue, Tacoma Park.
Is there a second?
This is Commissioner Haynes. I'll second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All of these pass. And we appreciate the work that you have done to get these projects in conditions so that we can easily approve them. That makes our job easier and hopefully makes yours easier as well. We will now move to preliminary consultations, and the first one we will hear tonight is item 2A at 6100 Connecticut Avenue in Chevy Chase. Is there a staff report?
Yes, John Lieberts, Historic Preservation Staff. So the resource at 6100 Connecticut Avenue is a Georgian Revival clubhouse with prominent neoclassical elements built in 1911. The Chevy Chase Club is an outstanding resource in the Chevy Chase Village Historic District. The standards for review are Chapter 24A, the Chevy Chase Village Design Guidelines, and the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. The Chevy Chase Design Guidelines provides additional direction for the Chevy Chase Club. Of note, the district only includes the clubhouse shown here, the shelter, and the stable on the southern end of the site. The plan recognizes that the building must continue to evolve over time and continue to meet the needs of its members. Any alterations to the main clubhouse not visible from the public right-of-way should be subject to very lenient scrutiny. And finally, that changes to the rear of the building should be approved as a matter of course. Here's a series of sandboard maps and 2 historic photographs of the building. For the sandboard maps, you can see the original footprint on the left. In 1926, you had the addition of the Bradley House to the south, that's connected by a small corridor, and the women's locker room on the northern end here. Again, 1927, 1963, you can see this same footprint with some other extensions and additions over time. And here is a historic photograph on the top right of what it originally looked like in 1911, and then the alterations that happened in 1915, the extension of that rear porch, and the addition of the semicircular bay. The project team included this very helpful graphic that shows the different phases of development. You have the enclosure of that porch in the rear in 1939 and replacement of some of the windows in 1969 and 2002. You have this 1958 addition that doesn't pop up on the Sanborn map for some reason, but it's in the Chevy Chase Club's records. And also, probably most prominently, you have the demolition of what was that Northern Woman's Locker here in 1969 for this large addition. So the proposal includes fenestration alterations, alterations to an existing terrace and patio, and construction of a new terrace and deck, hardscape and pathway alterations, the installation of cable railings, rooftop mechanical equipment, removal of 2 trees, and lighting alterations and replacements. So I'm going to walk through the various stages, starting with the fenestration alterations. But I wanted to first say that overall, staff finds that all the proposed elements are compatible with the massing scale, design, and materials of the historic resource and district, and should be approved as a matter of course due to the location on the rear of the building or areas that are not visible from Connecticut Avenue. So starting on the southern end of the building, we have the this corridor and the replacement of a window with a door. Just to orient you, here is the corridor that connects the men's locker room, which was part of that original 1911 building, to the Dudley House, which is a 1926 addition. And as a reminder, the historic district boundary is actually cuts through right through the center of that corridor. Here it is in the present day, and I'm looking at it from the rear of the property. And you can see the replacement of this window. They're going to cut the stone walls down to install a 6-panel wood door with a 6-light transom above it. This door also matches a door on the opposite side of the corridor that accesses the Dudley House. Staff finds this to be compatible with the design, and again, it should be reviewed with very lenient scrutiny as it's on a non-visible location of the clubhouse. Moving further along, we have this is the south elevation of the 1969 vestibule. The proposal is to replace this 2 non-historic 12-light wood windows with a double-leaf 10-light wood door. The design actually better recalls some of the fenestration patterns formerly seen at this building in historic photographs. Next, we have the replacement of these 2 double-leaf wood doors with a single-leaf door and a 3-light transom. This is on the south elevation in the original south gable wing that accesses the tap and card rooms. On the west and southern elevations of the 1958 addition, the proposal calls for the replacement of the fixed 2-light windows in kind and the replacement of the triple hung windows shown with the arrows on the screen with 2-light fixed windows that will match the design of the existing window. Here are those same triple hung windows from that 1958 addition shown on the other western side of that elevation. There's 4 of them on this side. I think the applicant team may talk about, on site, we talked about how this bar is actually going to be slightly lowered, I believe. But it wasn't evident from the application, and they may have some more comments on that when they speak. Here we have the nearly in-kind replacement of a pair of double-leaf doors on that 1958 addition. The door on the right now would be permanently fixed, but would be a false door to recall what is presently there. Here on the north elevation of the 1969 terrace room, we have the restoration of an opening to its original appearance. The doors would be removed and replaced with the fixed light windows that match the existing 2. Here, this is the 1969 pool and canteen wing. The submission didn't include any detailed sheets on this proposal, but it does note the in-kind replacement of the automatic doors. Here for the last fenestration change, this is the north elevation of the 1969 porch and canteen wing. The replacement of the fixed light windows and double leaf door in the canted bay. Something I missed on the staff report is that these windows on the side are actually doors, and they would be replaced with 4 light windows. Again, this is on a non-historic section of the building, and also not visible from the public right-of-way and should be approved as a matter of course, similar to the other fenestration alterations. Moving forward to the roof alterations, for the northern and southern terraces on the rear elevation, here and here where the blue arrows point, they have planned to re-roof and install wood decking, which would not be evident from the public right-of-way or really from any part of the property. As part of this project, they're proposing to install cable railing behind the existing the wood Chippendale railings as required by code. As you can see in the example photographs, this is really a transparent solution in lieu of alterations to these character-defining railings, and staff supportive of this alteration to this part of the building. In addition, there's going to be some new mechanical equipment put up on the roof. On the bottom left, you can see aerial photograph of this existing rooftop of where the equipment will be placed. There's already some existing equipment there. And on the bottom right, you have their proposed mechanical equipment. They also included sight lines from Connecticut Avenue right near the bus shelter, near Connecticut Avenue, and from the golf course. And you won't be able to see mechanical equipment from any of those vantage points. Moving forward to really probably the most significant part of the project is the terrace and deck and landscape alterations. This is the existing condition now. Just as a refresher again, the historic district boundary ends right here at the corridor connecting the Dudley house to the men's locker room. You have an existing brick patio here that was installed in 1969. There's probably a patio there prior to that, but we can see in construction photographs that it was all torn up at that period. And you have this 1958 wing here. So here on the left, it's a proposed demolition plan. On the right, it's the proposed hardscape, deck, terrace, and patios. So for the demolition, you have the removal of a couple of the walkways, resurfacing of a walkway while keeping it pretty much undisturbed. Demolition of this brick walkway with 2 risers. And as part of the patio where they're going to be building the new deck wrapping around this 1958 section, they're going to be redoing this part of the brick patio here and adding a new stair accessing it from the walkways here. Also of note are the 2 tree removals you can see on this plan. You have the removal of a 12-inch black gum and a 10-inch sweet gum trees here. So here is the renderings of the proposed deck, the existing on the left and the proposed on the right. What I think really helps this carry forward and relate to the building is the use of the wood railing, which is really a character-defining feature that is shown throughout multiple iterations of this building over the last 115 or so years. They continue to use this deck material and railing, the deck railing as a character-defining feature in different phases of construction. As part of this, moving forward, the applicant should address how they'll construct the deck in consideration of any nearby significant trees in relation to the footings and other construction methods that they may address in their presentation tonight. Here also, you'll have the partial demolition of one of the stone walls and part of that patio right here for the addition of this stair. So this is the new brick paving in this square section here before the bend, and here's the new staircase. Staff in the staff report noted that additional details should be included about this stair in the HOP application. So the new brick pathway that runs perpendicular to parallel to the men's locker room. It's here for ADA accessibility. It removes this two-stone stair riser and replaces it just with a singular slope. And you have these two stone walls that taper down as you approach the building that's being added as well. For the lighting package, staff, we didn't include every single light proposed throughout in this presentation, but basically you have the replacement of the existing lighting with very similar lighting throughout the rear elevation. Most of it is copper, and most of it is appropriate in terms of design and materials to the historic setting itself in the building. And it should be improved as a matter of course as it's on the rear elevation. So overall, staff's findings, staff finds that the alterations are compatible with the massing scale, design, and fenestration patterns of the historic resource, and should be approved as a matter of course as they're located on the rear elevation of the building or is not visible from the public right-of-way. And in terms of HPC feedback, staff seeking overall comments about the compatibility of the massing and scale of the new terrace and deck with the clubhouse, the appropriateness of the cable railing installed behind the existing railings to satisfy code requirements, the removal of the triple hung windows of the 1958 addition, and the replacement of the window on the south elevation of the men's locker room with the door, and that's within that hyphen that we started off the fenestration changes with. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for staff?
I have one. This is
Commissioner Burdett.
Yes. Regarding the roof equipment, they showed sight lines from grade around that area, but I'm not familiar with the overall larger area, but is that roof very visible from another location a little bit further out, or is it pretty much obscured by other roof forms?
I think from the main public right-of-way on Kinetic Avenue, I think you'd have a hard time seeing any of that mechanical equipment. I'm not sure if you really went out into the golf course, if you'd see any of it. I don't believe so, based on how the topography is, but the architects may be able to better answer that when they come forward.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, if not, I would welcome the owner and owner's representatives to come forward. If you could come and take a seat at the table, and there's the mic, to each take a microphone. There's a button you can push that will turn on the microphone. And if you could all also introduce yourselves. I have two names, and obviously there appear to be more. I have Alyssa Stein and Thomas Rattery. So if you could introduce yourselves for the record, that would be terrific. Thank you. And you'll have 7 minutes now. You can.
Wait, don't plug anything into the, do you have a presentation that you'd like to share out?
We do have a presentation. You've seen much of the visual.
We can pause. We're happy to accommodate that
Yeah.
for you, but you can't plug a thumb drive into the computer. But can you email that to us and then we can pull it up? Or is there another way we could perhaps do that? Could we take a quick
Yeah, we'll take a
pause?
little break.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're back live.
Thank you. So if you all, I read your names off, but if you could also state your names for the record, that would be great. And then you have 7 minutes. Might take a little longer, which is okay. Not hugely longer, but we would be delighted to hear from you. Thank you.
Luke O'Boyle, General Manager, Chevy Chase Club.
Hi, good evening. Alyssa Stein with EHT Traceries.
Hi, Tom Redary. I'm an architect with DLR Group, Bowie Gridley.
Good evening. I'm Charles Abel. I'm the president of the Chevy Chase Club.
Thank you very much. Now, we're ready.
All right, perfect. Okay, let's maybe this way. Perfect. Good evening. We are here tonight to present a concept that includes replacing non-historic windows and doors, constructing a new wood terrace that extends from the existing brick terrace, re-roofing the second floor terraces, replacing existing second floor railings in kind and installing cable rails to meet code requirements, and replacing and relocating a new rooftop mechanical units, to name just a few of the things that we are going to be discussing tonight. And Tom will discuss the proposal in greater detail in this presentation. But the overall goal is to continue to allow the club to modernize and meet the changing needs of the club members. So just to orient you, the Chevy Chase Club is located in Chevy Chase, southwest of on the southwest corner of the Connecticut Avenue and Bradley Lane intersection. There are several built resources of the club, including the main clubhouse, that are located within the boundaries of the Chevy Chase Village Historic District, as John discussed. And this evening, the majority of the work, or all of the work, takes place on the main clubhouse. And the main clubhouse boundaries are outlined in red. So as staff summarized, the Chevy Chase Club has undergone a number of alterations during its history since its original construction in 1911. In order to accommodate club growth and also to meet the changing needs of club members. Staff has gone through in great detail, so I won't repeat, especially given our limited time, but we will go through some historic photos just to illustrate some of the changes. So here's the club in 1913, shortly after its construction. Here in 1919, showing the expanded two-story porch and the rounded bay. Here it is in 1957, just before the completion of the men's card room, which you can see on the right-hand side of your screen, and you can see the original window configuration here. And the top left photograph from 1968 shows that at some point between the completion of the club room and 1968, the windows were replaced to their current configuration. These two other photographs shows the construction of the new north wing, as well as that egress stair to the south. And then here are some current photographs. Here again, and I will hand it off to Tom.
Thank you, Alyssa. So my intent here was to walk you through the scope of the work that were planned. John really did an excellent job of summing that up, so I will not dwell on it too long. I will just try to go through, expand a little bit where you showed some interest and had some questions, but please feel free to ask if you'd like me to go deeper into detail on anything. So we show them the club here broken up into a south and a north region. North, we're doing very limited work, mostly interior. South is where the majority of the exterior work is concentrated, and interior as well. Upstairs, John pointed out the changes we were planning to make to the south and the north terrace, specifically re-roofing to replace some issues with the waterproofing there. We are going to keep the existing Chippendale rails as is, but we are applying this cable rail and forage centers to meet current building code. This is the mechanical equipment that Ms. Burt asked about. It is a new makeup air unit for the new kitchen and an exhaust fan. This is the only really portion of our work that could be considered visible from the public way. Here's a view from immediately adjacent to the building. You can see that little notch to the left of the main building entry. That is the little portion of the lower roof where these things are located. There's an existing Chippendale rail there, which partially obscures your view of it. But really, the bigger story here is the trees around that almost entirely obscure the view from there. But we did do a quick view study here. You can see when you're close to the building, you don't see it at all. When you get further away, specifically for the person on the right, who's shown there out at the entry drive of the club, you maybe start to get a hint of the equipment, except that you're almost entirely blocked by the trees, so you really don't get a good view of any of it. Similarly, on the left side, the west of the building, up close you don't see it at all. As you get deeper into the golf course, you may begin to see it a little bit, but you're pretty well removed. This is a quick summary of the exterior work that we're planning on. John, again, walked through all of these replacement doors and windows around the existing building. This is a look at the demo. One correction, the previous version of this presentation showed us removing a tree to the left of that gray area of path that we're removing. We're actually going to do everything we can to keep that tree in place, so we shifted the new path so that it avoids it. So we're just removing that 10-inch sweet gum that's noted and the 10-inch maple on the existing patio. One other note is that the layout of the new terrace is really specifically done to avoid as much damage to the existing trees as possible, specifically this extremely large oak that is tucked right behind the building that's notable in pretty much every view from the west side. These are showing the existing paths that we were removing. Again, that's to the stair and existing patio up to the upper right-hand side of the screen. That's being removed to allow us to expand the terrace. We're replacing the path that leads up to the existing patio to allow for ADA access to the outdoor space. And then here's a quick view of the new plan, again showing all of the new doors and windows we're planning, the new terrace, the new stair, and then the new egress door that is in that hyphen that was mentioned in the locker room. So that one's being provided to meet building code. And these are a quick summary of the change on the north side. Again, very limited. It's mostly replacing doors and windows in kind and adding a new window where there was once sort of a less than useful sliding door. Again, here's the new plan. Here's the new pathway that we were talking about. Here's a quick summary of the existing plants. The plants that are being removed or relocated, everything that we're replacing them with are in keeping with what is currently there. So nothing too out of line there. I'm not going to really dwell on any of these. These are really just showing all the changes that John summarized. The new doors and windows and a look at the details. We've been working with Marvin Windows for some time now, trying to get the detailing as close or at least in keeping with what is existing. The new door with it's going to take the place of the double doors underneath the overhang. Here's that new door for egress from the men's locker room that we mentioned in that hyphen. You can see another view of it here. We're showing the existing door across the way. We mentioned that the new one is trying to match that. Two new doors at the end of History Hallway, again, trying to be in keeping with what's existing. Replacing the fixed windows all the way around the tap and card room, which includes replacing the triple hung with fixed windows with just the single upper mullion to mimic all the other windows. We don't feel that triple hung are really necessary functionally, nor are they really, I think they're a little inconsistent with the look that we are going for and the historic look of the rest of the building. There was a question on the terrace. We are doing it on this diamond pier system. These are specifically chosen piers that kind of come in with this pronged approach that is meant to avoid tree roots to the extent possible. So again, we were trying for as light of a touch in the installation as possible, as opposed to, say, doing more traditional helical piers, which will take out anything in their path. Again, we're doing the Chippendale rail to match the existing. We're providing that 4-inch cable rail behind, which we feel is as invisible as possible while still meeting building code. And this is an example of a previous project where we did that. This was for a private school in Connecticut, but you can see very similar rail, very similar non-conforming rail, where the aircraft cable is applied behind it. It really falls away. We think it's a very effective solution. Proposed window that we discussed. The proposed work on the north side at this bar area. Again, we are really just replacing things in kind. And there's a series of renderings here. We don't have to go through all of them. I think you probably get the idea at this point, but I'm happy to address any questions you may have, or I'm happy to cycle through these if you like.
Thank you very much. You covered a lot, very short time. Thank you. Any questions? Commissioner Pelletier.
Thank you. You just showed, can you go back a few, you were showing back, that one. Oh, forward. Are you adding those windows up above?
Oh, no, we're not.
You're not, so those are existing?
If those are actually meant to be there, yes, they would be existing. We are not.
Okay, so they're just not showing
providing anymore.
existing.
That seems
Okay.
to be a hiccup in our system. Sorry about that.
Okay, that was one question.
Good catch.
And there are some other inconsistencies on there. There's 2 doors on either side on the new, and there's a window and a door on the existing. But the only thing that you're working on is that.
You were absolutely right. I
That
cannot
piece in the
explain
middle.
those inconsistencies.
Okay, that's
but-
fine.
But nothing outside of that little red bubble is proposed.
And my other question is, have you looked at any possible ways of screening that equipment? Because right now, I notice in your diagram, you're showing the sight lines to the top of the railing, but it's a transparent railing, right? It's just the same railing that you have everywhere else. So really, the sight line is from the top of the roof, not 3 feet up.
That's fair. Yeah, the railing obscures it a bit, but you
Right.
are correct.
And I guess my question is, did you look at anything, like leaving the railing, but maybe making it more opaque or something from Connecticut Avenue? I mean, I agree with you that, I didn't even know this building was here. That's how, how many trees there are. But I'd be concerned that you could see something from Connecticut Avenue just driving by, and it's such a beautiful building, like to have that, the usual equipment on the roof is a little bit, gives me a little bit of heartburn. If there was some nondescript way of screening that, like putting something opaque behind the railing, I don't know how that would look, but I'm curious if that is anything that you looked into yet.
It's a good question. Yes, we did. In my experience, doing a screen like that, it's often a cure that's worse than the disease.
Yeah.
You get with this big, massive thing that, for it to be an effective screen from any position, ends up being much, much larger than what you're actually trying to screen. So I've not found it to be, it's a great solution when it is like an air handling unit sitting alone on a naked roof, essentially. Here, I think that leaving it and allowing the slate roof and the Chippendale rail and the trees to just kind of gently obscure it, I feel like is probably a more impactful solution.
And is it the mirror image on the other side of the, so you have one of those hyphens on both sides of the big entry, and they
That's
both
correct.
have the Chippendale railing up at the top. So
That's
if you
right.
made one opaque and the other one non-opaque, it would sort of look weird.
So here's a view from the west side, looking back on it. So you can see the existing railing in the upper left-hand corner of the image. And then you can see it with the new mechanical unit there. So it's the same railing condition on either side.
That's from the back.
This is from the back, that's right.
Yeah, I was more concerned about from the front, from Connecticut Avenue. I'm just curious if you have a symmetrical, I assume it's symmetrical on both sides of the big entry.
Yeah, I'm looking back at that head-on.
I don't know if you'd
We
call
are
it
not.
here.
We don't, I guess you can kind of see
Yeah,
that.
so that
We are
one-
not adding the railing. The railing is existing.
Okay, but you don't have that same condition on the other side of the big I keep
Kinda
wanting
hard
to
to
call
see.
it a
It's-
portico, but it's not a portico.
It's not a perfectly mirrored building. It's similar on
Okay.
both sides, but it's not probably not the exact same condition.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Commissioner Burdett?
To keep beating the issue a little longer, the tree in front of the equipment on Connecticut Avenue, that's a deciduous tree, but is it full enough just with the branching that in the winter it obscures the equipment as well?
That's a good question. I guess I've not done a study of it in the winter. I might ask our guest to give any of their observations.
Thank you. The trees you see would be in a planting bed in the foreground. There would be an additional planting bed with trees of significant height on Connecticut Avenue. And so from an automobile or even from a position on the opposite sidewalk, you'd be looking through a wall of trees to another planting bed and then up past the rail to the equipment, depending on your angle. So there are a number of evergreens within that planting bed. I can't speak if the particular tree we see in the image is not, but there are a number of magnolias and others in that same planting bed.
Yeah, it should be pretty hard to spot it without standing there looking for it. So, thank you.
Commissioner Haynes?
I just have two comments. Is the existing railing height, does that meet code? On the balconies?
On the balconies, yes, it does.
It does. And if you scroll back to page 31.
Oops. So we shifted the order a little bit and the page numbers did not catch up.
On the proposed elevation, second floor, I assume that double door to the left of the upper pavilion is not proposed.
Again, no, we are not touching anything up there. I apologize for the lag between the existing model and the proposed. There appears to be some layer issue, but no, we are not touching those. We're not touching any of the doors or windows up on the second level.
Very good. Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Galloway?
Thank you, Commissioner Galloway. Just a couple questions here. Back to the equipment again. Was there any equipment on that roof? Is there any currently on the roof?
There is currently some equipment up there as well as an exhaust fan. I believe the satellite image that staff member John showed a little bit of.
It was hard.
Yeah, I pulled that up on my screen if you want to switch over. And and just to follow up on some of these questions, when we were out there earlier, what was that, in January, I tried to look for any mechanical equipment, and there is some mechanical equipment I saw on this satellite view, but from the street, you really couldn't see anything that's existing up on the roof because of all the trees and, the railing and just this location. And the location seems, this seems a little bit taller, the equipment that's being proposed, but it's still about, and maybe a little bit more towards the front, but, it was hard to see anything in those spots. And that was in, January.
All right, thanks. And as a follow-up then, in terms of your sight lines, the equipment that you're showing in the model or in the sections, is that consistent with something that's been selected at this point, or is that an anticipated general height? And where I'm going with that is I want you to be careful that if you end up with a piece of equipment that's twice as high, that doesn't reflect the same sightline issue that you have now.
Yeah, it's a very good question.
But go ahead.
Yes, the models came from the manufacturer, from the selected equipment supplier, so it should be accurate. There's always a little bit of.
I'm not talking an inch or two.
Yeah.
It's just not 10 feet. All right. Just out of curiosity, the one door that you're replacing, the double door you're replacing with a single, is there a programmatic reason, or was there any consideration just to keep the double door the way it was?
There was consideration. Some of the existing doors out to the terrace from the tap and card room have a step. This is one opportunity where you can get a slope and have it be a reasonable ADA access. The two doors are, I think, a little bit trickier to get through if you're navigating with limited mobility. A single door, a little bit more functional. It's easier for the wait staff to work their way in and out. We just found it to be a more functional solution, and a single door, properly detailed, we think is still in keeping with the architectural style of the rest of the building.
Okay, thank you. And then last but not least, it wasn't a herringbone pattern, but on the new brick on the walkway, the new ADA walkway, it looked like, I don't know what the pattern exactly was, but is that pattern indicative of the same other brick walkways around the site, or just?
It's meant to match the existing
Okay.
brick pattern, yeah. So we are removing the existing brick, we're replacing them with the existing brick in a similar layout.
Okay, thank you, that's all.
I'd just like to add also, in terms of your questions, that for the HOP application, we would expect those types of details regarding the height of the mechanical equipment, the size of it, the specifications, and so all that would be part of the subsequent application that's actually approved by the HPC.
Commissioner Pelletier has another question.
Sorry. Are you changing any of the masonry openings with this door replacement, like going from the doubles to the singles?
We are not changing any of the masonry openings, with
Okay.
the exception of the new egress door that we're adding to the locker room. It's currently a window. We are keeping the window opening the same size. We're keeping the header in the same location, but we need to take out the bottom of the window.
Right, but the width of them isn't changing?
No change
Okay.
to width.
Thank you.
More questions? We will begin our deliberation, and let me just tell you, this is something we do that I would like to say it's unique, but it probably isn't. We do this, we have preliminary consultation, we have tremendous expertise on this commission. We will give you what we think where this project will need to be to make it a successful historic area work permit. You're not required to take our suggestions. Usually it's not a bad idea to at least pay attention to them. And so we will give you our take on this project and look forward to seeing a historic area work permit hopefully fairly soon. Does anyone like to start off here? Commissioner Doman.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Doman. I just want to say you have an overwhelming amount of information that's been presented. Looks like to me it's been well thought out. Looks like you spent a lot of time on this project. I think you've answered our questions appropriately. I'm just pleased with the amount of detail and the amount of thought that's gone into this project that's come before us, and wish you good luck. Thank you.
Anyone else? Commissioner Haynes.
I'll second Commissioner Doman's remarks, but also say that in general, I would support the project as designed and illustrated. I think you are maintaining the integrity of the design, the original resource design, and I find that the massing and scale of the new terrace is appropriately sized. I think it complements the whole facility nicely. The Chippendale railing, cable railing idea is also a great way to meet the codes without visually impeding the Chippendale design. And I'm fine with all the fenestration moves that you're making. So I would certainly support the project as submitted.
Commissioner Burdett.
I can support this hop as well. It's very well done. And invite us out when you're all done. We'd love to take a look at it.
Else like to add to this? Yes, Commissioner Galway.
Commissioner Galway, I will pile on and say that I think it's, very well orchestrated. The documents look very thorough, and I can support it as well. Thank you.
Commissioner Pelletier, do you want to add? Might as well.
I second everything everybody else said.
Yeah, I do too. I just, one thing I would like to add, though, I think staff pointed out some issues that need a little bit more information. And reading through them, I think they're reasonable, and I think it would be very good to pay attention to the additional requests that they had for information for the hop, but I think it's a very good project. I live not too far away, go by there frequently, and I think you're really on the right track. These are the types of projects we like to see. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I had one more question.
Uh-oh. No, wait a minute. Whoa, whoa,
I
whoa.
already said it would support it, but I'm just curious about something. Am I not allowed to do that?
Yeah, I think we're finished with this one. Thank
I'll
you.
ask him later.
Yeah, that'd be fine. Thank you. Our next project is number 2B at 7216 Maple Avenue in Tacoma Park. And I have two names here, Maria Wright and Marissa Walker. But first of all, I believe we'd like to have a staff.
Okay, so this is 7216 Maple Avenue in Tacoma Park. The house, the Dutch colonial-styled house was constructed in 1924. The house is a contributing resource to the Tacoma Park Historic District. The standards of review are Chapter 24A, the Tacoma Park Design Guidelines, and the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation. Oh, I was on the wrong slide before. Here's the locational map. Just to orient ourselves, it's on the west side of Maple Avenue. The proposal calls for the demolition of a one-story non-historic rear addition built in 1989 or thereabout, and the construction of a new two-story rear addition on the back of the building. The Dutch colonial house, again, was built in 1924. The wood frame is wrapped presently with vinyl siding, and it's capped with a side gambrel roof with shed dormers. As shown on the sandboard, the footprint of the form of the building has remained generally intact. Alterations include a second story added to the southern wing here, and that addition in 1989 that's on the back of the building. Here are the views from the north and south of the building, looking from the sidewalk towards the rear of the property. You can see that 1989 addition. But really, the rear yard from the other side of the house is mostly obscured by this two-story wing. Here are the present-day views of the back of the property. Here's that 1989 addition again, and the shed dormer on the back of the side gambrel main part of the building. And this is the addition that's proposed to be demolished. Here is a site plan and first floor plan to show you the overall scope and scale of the project. The depth of the existing house is about 25 feet 9 inches, and the proposed addition is 31 feet 6 inches. You have here, the addition consists of a hyphen that connects the historic house to a new side gambrel section with shed dormers. The addition's ridge is 5 feet 3 inches below the ridge of the existing house. The hyphen features cementitious fiberboard siding and board and batten. The hyphen and the side gambrel addition features the cementitious fiberboard siding and the board and batten siding. You have the board and batten on the hyphen and the smooth cementitious fiberboard on that side gambrel addition. Here is the north elevation. It's set back about 14 feet from the face of the historic house. Fenestration consists of sliding glass doors and 4x4 double-hung aluminum-clad wood windows set over 4 light fixed windows. And there's a flagstone steps that access a wood landing. Of note, just on the drawings, some of these windows are actually not 4x4 on the existing house. These on the side are actually 6x6, and but the 4x4 window is still seen on that wing on the street-facing side and on the rear, and so it's still, the 4x4 windows they're proposing still relate to the historic house. On the back of the addition, you have sliding glass doors and casement windows in the shed dormer. And here on the new north elevation, which will be visible from the public right-of-way partially, the continuation of the discussed materials, frame and fenestration, again, the board and batten hyphen. So overall, with respect to the preservation approach, the architect selected a literal replication of the historic house, the respective form, that is connected by a hyphen. This prioritizes compatibility over differentiation. And so you have this smaller scale side gambrel addition with shed dormers that connects to a larger side gambrel house, historic house with shed dormers. The approach is compatible due to the use of the hyphen and the different scales. When you choose literal replication, this often requires the addition to be smaller when compared to the historic house, which was accomplished by the lower ridgeline and the overall massing. So the addition does not overwhelm the historic house or the district. One of the staff's concerns is the north elevation. The HPC generally requires additions to be inset at least 1 foot. Here, compared to the 6 inches shown in the proposal, an additional setback would provide greater relief and limit visibility from the public rights-of-way. There also needs to be additional detail potentially about the connection between that shed dormer here and the new addition, particularly with how it interacts if you go to push it back a little bit further. There could be some type of awkward transition potentially that should be explored. Here is a rendering they provided that shows what an individual would see from the street. It's clear that you can see some of the hyphen, but there's really limited visibility of most of the addition. And I think if you set that addition back a little bit farther, it would even limit visibility more. So staff findings overall, the demolition of the non-historic rear addition is consistent with the applicable guidelines. The concept, scale, and massing is consistent with the applicable guidelines as well. Again, the literal replication of the historic house connected by a hyphen prioritizes compatibility, and the project is successful due to the smaller scale or ridgeline and the use of the hyphen. The addition will not overwhelm the character of the house or district, and again, we recommend that the inset on the north elevation be increased to at least 1 foot. The design of the addition is compatible with the house. The proposed windows recall the design and fenestration patterns, and the sliding glass doors and flagstone steps wouldn't even be visible from the public right-of-way. The materials are compatible with the historic house and surrounding district. The HPC regularly approves aluminum-clad wood windows and doors, cementitious fiberboard siding, and cellular PVC trim on additions. The board and batten siding differentiates the hyphen from the historic house and serves as a transition to the side gambrel addition. One part that we did bring up in the staff report is the exposure of the cementitious fiberboard siding on the side gambrel addition doesn't need to match the existing vinyl siding, which is a non-historic material. This is a point of discussion that perhaps the HPC would like to touch upon. And lastly, the staff report discusses that there should be a tree impact assessment done and a protection plan when filing for a historic area work permit. The root zone for tree B will be within the limit of disturbance as shown on their site plan. So staff requests HPC feedback on the appropriateness of the concept, scale, design, and materials of the addition, the appropriate inset of the addition on the north elevation, and what a compatible setback from the historic house should be. And lastly, if there are any comments on the exposure of the proposed cementitious fiberboard siding on the side gambrel addition with, in relation to what the exposure would be appropriate for the house. Any questions?
Any questions for staff? Okay, thank you. Now, I'm sorry I called you up so soon. I got a little bit anxious here. But we have Maria Wright and Marissa Walker. So if you also could state your name for the record, that would be helpful. And you'll have 7 minutes.
Hi, I'm Maria Wright. I'm the architectural designer for this project. I don't have much to add to the staff report. I'm in agreement with how John characterized the concept, and I'm here to take direct questions from the staff.
I'm Marissa Walker, and I'm the homeowner, my husband and I. I don't have much to add, but I can tell you about myself and my family briefly. We just moved in this Monday and love the house and love the neighborhood. We moved from half a mile up Maple Avenue on Sherman Avenue. I have 3 kids, and we are just very much looking forward to living in the house, and we love the look of the outside and the front and love the old part of the house pretty much exactly as it is. Just want a little more space, and I really appreciate you taking all this time on my family's home. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? You? Commissioner Haynes?
Well, overall, I like the concept, the direction of the concept. The staff mentioned the 12-inch offset on the first floor hyphen to the main house. I think that could be achieved if on the second floor, where the addition meets the existing dormer, the existing wall is proud of the existing dormer and appears to be about 6 inches. And I was wondering, can the entire second floor just shift over to align with the new wall and the dormer wall aligning, new and existing aligning, and with using vertical trim to transition the two materials. And then that would result, I believe, on the first floor, would move in 6 inches and you'd have your 12 inches. It seems like that is an achievable solution. You might have to steal a few inches out of the width of your kitchen to make that all work, but it seems like that would affect the function of your first floor kitchen and the circulation and so forth. But in general, I think the massing works well. It certainly respects the original home form and massing. I think the material choices are nice as well, although I'd like to see the vinyl siding replaced myself if it was in the budget on the original house. I'm sure it wasn't originally vinyl, obviously, and it would be wonderful to have the entire skin of the house match, both old and new. That's all.
Commissioner Doman?
Yes, Commissioner Doman. I just support what Commissioner Haynes has said. I think you hit all the necessary things about the size and the massing, the lower ridge line of the new addition, the repetition of the gambrel roofs. I like that. The comment that was made by staff about possibly moving that hyphen in a foot, I think is inappropriate. I think that should be easily handled. I think it actually would work better if you move it in a little bit. I think that would be great. I support this. I think you've done a lot of good homework on this. And I'm curious, the homeowners moved in already?
We just moved in on Monday.
And you're ready to undertake a major remodeling in a new house, right? So
Yes.
you're going to put up with dust and
we intend to
disruption of
keep
the
a lot-
kitchen, and you won't have a
Yes.
kitchen for quite a while, it looks like.
We're hoping to get the timing just right, and of course, that won't work out. But I just wanted to prioritize trying to sell our previous house at a time in the spring market. And so we moved in, and we'll hopefully be able to keep a lot in boxes and make it work.
Well, good luck to you.
Thank you.
Right.
Any other questions? Commissioner Pelletier?
What is the distance, maybe it's on here, the distance between the corner of the garage and the corner of the new family room?
I'm sorry.
10 feet?
It's about 10 feet.
10 feet,
Sorry.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't work as a garage as such because
Yeah.
the driveway is very narrow, passing by the sunroom. So what we hope to create is a sort of courtyard social space where right now there's a chain link fence that kind of cuts in half that area. And if we take out that chain link fence and have those stairs coming down from the sliding doors, it'd be sort of a natural place to have outdoor gatherings, and use it's really it's a garage, but you couldn't get a car in there, and we don't intend to use it that way. So maybe, having it open, having the kids hang out in there with their friends while the grown-ups are in the main house.
Yeah, you could put a smart car through there.
A smart car or a
Okay,
little
yeah, that's
Vespa.
fine. I was just trying to, I appreciate everything, like all the 3D stuff that's in here is really helpful. So I was just more curious about that because it's a bit close, but it's not an issue. It's just a question. Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, I think I actually will start this one off. When I saw the picture of this, I almost cried because I had a house in Oregon, in Salem, Oregon. It was a side-by-side duplex that is virtually identical to this, and I miss that house so much. So I had a special feeling for this. And I think I agree with my colleagues. I think you're really on the right track. I think you're doing a very sympathetic addition to the house. There were some questions that were raised by staff and by my colleagues that I think you should be able to address fairly easily. But I think you have a good project, and we're looking forward to seeing the historic area work permit very soon so that you can get going on this.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I will.
Commissioner Burdett.
Yeah, Commissioner Burdett, and I can agree with everything. It's really a very nice project. We get a lot of additions that are master suites with kitchens, and usually it ends up being the tail wagging the dog of the house. And this is, if more projects came through like this, where it was just perfectly scaled and very sympathetic to the original house, we would be so much happier as a commission. So, yes, I fully support this hop. I do think you do need to work on that one little corner spot there. But other than that, good luck with this. I really look forward to seeing the completion when you're done. And when you are done and it's beautiful, you can get an award for it in this county, by the way. So in 2 years, make sure you remember that.
Commissioner Galway?
Commissioner Galway, thank you for getting rid of the rear addition. I can certainly support the direction of your plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Look forward to seeing this one.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Thanks.
If you'd like to see the inside of the 1989 edition, it's all tan.
I think we can,
And the pipes burst.
we
on
might be able to
Christmas
pass on
Day,
that. Thank
so.
you.
Oh, yeah, I forgot it was.
Okay, our next project is, let me get my, number 2C at 10210 Montgomery Avenue in Kensington. Is there a staff report?
There will be in just 1 second, Mr. Chair. This is the staff presentation for tonight's 2C, which is 10212 Montgomery Avenue in Kensington. This is It's the Warner Manor or Warner Mansion, constructed circa 1890 with a 1910 carriage house. It is a primary one resource listed to the Kensington Historic District, not an individually listed master plan site. And the proposal is for a comprehensive rehabilitation with partial demolition, a building addition, and then additional site work required to make this work as multifamily housing. So again, this is to be reviewed under 24A8, the Kensington Master Plan Amendment, including the Vision of Kensington, and the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation, specifically standards 2, 9, and 10, and I have the full text of those at the end if you need to refer back to those. So just briefly, a walk around the house. This is the front, the north elevation. We're walking around to the left. And here's the rear. There was a non-historic addition we'll talk about shortly. And then this is looking up from the circle itself. You can see the carriage house there on the right, and then the carriage house walking around. So again, this was constructed by Brainerd Warner, the founder of Kensington, as a summer house. It served as an assisted living facility with a very large addition for the latter part of the 20th century and the beginning of the 21st century. And the historic house hasn't been put to use since its ownership was transferred to Montgomery Parks within the last decade. So what you see on the left is actually the first Sanborn map of Kensington that shows Warner Manor. And then what you see on the right is the 1963 Sanborn map with the quite large addition in blue projecting to the south. I do have some photos of that addition, which are not included here, but we'll be back for other preliminary consultations, and we can bring those back. So the site is currently owned by Montgomery Parks, and it's also held under an easement, which the Maryland Historical Trust sees. This is all part of Parks preparing to sell the property to the applicant. And some of what is still being worked out are the exact boundaries of the part of the property to be sold, because Parks will retain ownership of the remainder of the circle. Also, a bill is currently in committee at the General Assembly to extinguish the easement. The easement was for exterior and interior, and extinguishing the easement will make the rehabilitation much more feasible from the interior. Archaeology has been completed. The parks and planning archaeologists continue to communicate, and there were potentially 3 significant features, including sections of historic curbing, a mound corresponding to a possible previous structure, and a well or cistern on the south side of the carriage house. And those items were included in the archaeology report, which was included in the staff report, but the filled-in depression there, we have the historic curb and the brick feature there. So the applicant proposes to construct 17 market-rate condominium units within the mansion, carriage house, and proposed building addition. And again, the focus of this preliminary consultation is sort of overall size, scale, and massing of the addition and proposed site work, so we can address specific material preservation and design details in a separate preliminary consultation. The proposed rear addition measures about 35 feet by 50. We do have annotated drawings that we just received today, and will extend off of the modified L. And additional hardscaping is required to satisfy parking minimums and to meet current safety code. Width of roads is required to get fire trucks in, and that's one of the primary drivers of widening some of those paths. So again, walking through, this is the basement floor plan, but the addition is the same size in the first and second floor. You see the historic building here. And then to connect the historic building to the addition, the applicant proposes to construct a glass hyphen. It is a much smaller expression on the western elevation. On the eastern elevation, they're getting a hallway on the first and second floor, so more of that will be expressed. And they're also using the hyphen for circulation inside the building, which is also shown in the floor plans. Again, site work includes expanding the parking areas required for each individual unit, widening the driveways for emergency vehicle requirement, and stormwater management through dry wells and bioretention and bioswales. Parks had a number of comments, and they're still working with the applicant. Their objectives are to reduce the number of parking spaces if possible, parking on the east side of the mansion, potentially changing the layout to head in off of the loop road, moving the trash and recycling area closer to the entrance of Montgomery Avenue, only widen where necessary, reduce the size of the stormwater management features. That'll be based on the total size of the impervious surface as well. So some of that is all in flux. Adjust the limits of disturbance, which you see marked here, to avoid mature trees, and then continue to coordinate with the archaeological report findings and adjust if required. So again, tonight's request is for HPC feedback on the placement of the proposed addition, the size and massing of the proposed addition, and any other comments about the proposed addition. Also, staff requests feedback on the placement and size of the proposed parking areas, the appropriateness of the asphalt and concrete in the paved areas, and any other comments regarding hardscaping. And I will answer any questions that you have. Again, we can go back to floor plans if you're at all interested. And I'll answer any questions.
Any questions for staff?
I do.
Commissioner Doman.
Yeah, I'm not exactly familiar with the Maryland Historical Trust, but as it stands right now, the interior and the exterior is protected, that it cannot be changed. Is that how it is?
It's not that it can't be changed. It is the way the easement was drafted, it identified specific areas and sort of identified on a hierarchy which needed to be preserved to the greatest degree and which ones allowed for more flexibility. Regardless, I mean, we're proceeding as though that easement doesn't exist because it is in the process of being extinguished. And if it's not there, then we don't have to worry about those interior constraints in this project.
Yeah.
I would point out that there is specifically the front historic entrance is identified in the floor plans. Sorry, let me get to the first floor plan. As the lobby/museum, so the original staircase is being preserved. You can see that, you know, some of the historic fireplaces are being preserved both in public spaces and in units. So there certainly is interior preservation occurring. It's just not being reviewed and approved by the Maryland Historical Trust Easement Committee before coming to the HPC.
Yeah. Obviously, if the easement isn't relinquished, there's no project on it that I can see. Is there a requirement? This is going to be in the 17 condo units. Is there and this is not necessarily historic preservation, but does the applicant have to have so many parking spots per apartment or per condo? Is it like 2 spots are required? I mean, because the how much space is taken up by parking is going to be significant here, it seems to me.
So parking minimums are established in the zoning ordinance. So it's based on calculations that I'm sure the applicant could get into beyond simply units proposed. But that's where additional parking is partially driven by that requirement.
That's a different question. Is the carriage house also under the historic trust?
Yes.
That's
But again, it will be extinguished, so we're proceeding as though it does not exist.
Okay, and the building is empty right now. Do you know how long it was empty?
It's been empty since at least 2012, right? Is it older? I'm looking at the applicant, and we have a representative from. Sorry. Okay.
Okay. Well, my comment is that there's. I don't know. The longer a piece of property is empty, the more likely that vandalism can occur and other things can happen to the property. So,
just to note, this is Rebecca Ballo for the record. The property has been continuously maintained by the Montgomery County Parks Department and their staff, and it is in the middle of Kensington, the town of Kensington, the Friends of Warner Circle. There is great interest in in monitoring and protecting this property in perpetuity, and To my knowledge, there have not been any issues, but if you have any questions, you can direct that specifically to the applicant or to the park staff who are here tonight to answer those questions.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Commissioner Pelletier?
Just to, the easement thing, is the whole thing being expunged or just the interior? So the exterior, there's no,
So the whole easement is, it's basically like the easement doesn't exist anymore.
okay. Does that create limitations for what restoration can happen? Or like, could they knock it down? Like what?
Well, no, because all of the work requires a hop. So.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
the work, if the easement were to exist, all of the work would need to be reviewed and approved by the easement
Maryland
committee.
Historical Trust.
Yes,
Yeah.
before, they would need to review it and approve it before we'd even bring it to you. So that's why I point out that we're bringing this forward as though the easement has
Okay.
already been extinguished
Got it.
because the HPC is the body that's responsible for reviewing it, and the Maryland Historical Trust has nothing to do with it at
And
this
do
point.
they, are the chances of it getting extinguished good?
I would say they are. It is supported by our agency. We've had discussions with the Maryland Historical Trust about this, about, with our legislative team, supporting this bill that's moving through. As a way, just some very brief background, it has been standard practice for a lot of cases where there is a bond bill or other money that comes from the state for historic preservation, that an easement that is managed by the Maryland Historical Trust tends to be attached to
Right.
those dollars. The state has been reviewing the efficacy of that policy, in particular where there are some redundancies in the system. This is a designated historic district with all alterations under review and the purview of the Historic Preservation Commission. Other easements that are managed by the state may not have that level of local regulation in place. So for this project, all involved seem to think that the property would be well and adequately reviewed and cared for without the additional layer of the easement review, which is why we're moving forward.
Got it.
The timing is a little interesting with it and the development project moving forward, which if you have specific questions about that, you can ask the applicant or the park staff.
No,
but
that's
we-
fine. You actually
we all
answered my
support-
question.
We all support this.
Okay, all right,
Okay.
cool. That's it.
Other questions for staff? Okay. If not, I would invite the owner and representative. I have several names: Elizabeth Bear, Daniel Eichner, and Richard Vitulio.
No, I'm sorry. We must not have put that correctly.
Okay, well, that's what I have.
Why don't we ask the applicant to introduce himself?
Yeah,
We
how
also
about-
have the representatives
How about-
from Kensington and the Parks Department to come
Yes.
forward.
Anybody who is with this project, if you could come up, yes. Okay. Yeah, if you could turn on your, I'm sorry, I just going by what I have here, and I apologize.
No, sorry,
so
that was
again-
our error.
Carl Vogelmeyer, I'm the applicant and the person responsible for this application.
Okay, terrific. You can have 7 minutes to explain this or answer questions, whatever your preference.
Sure. I'll quickly explain what we're trying to do here. I was approached 4 years ago by Parks to take this building and turn it into something that will last another 100 years. We've had experience at the National Park Seminary. Recently, we did the gymnasium that was incredibly successful, and those were 12 units. And we worked very closely with MHT on that, and also HPC. We then moved into the power plant, which is a power plant, a firehouse, and a music hall, which was another 14 units with a parking garage underneath that space. So there wasn't a lot of surface parking on that. In this situation, we're trying to add a relatively small addition to make it, financially viable and feasible for the entire project. I think there are 24 spaces currently on the site, not legal spaces, but There will be, I think, 32 spaces. For one-bedroom units, you would want 1.25 spaces. For a two-bedroom unit, I think it's 1.75. I may be misquoting that, but we clearly want to have as little spaces as possible. We also, it's an historic structure, and we do want to have an ADA compliant entrance and so forth to it. We build these buildings to last for 100 years. I mean, currently, we're, not being sued by anybody that we've sold to. And it's a very difficult situation to be in, but, the idea is to make sure that this building can handle a hurricane or, high force winds. And, the beauty of this project is that the mayor and the Friends of Warner Circle support this, primarily because, there will be usage of the spaces. In the carriage house, on the right-hand side, there will be a fitness center that will be for the residents, but for 6 to 8 times a year, the community will be able to use the fitness center for a recreation center. Furthermore, the mansion will have a museum that will be an interpretive museum of the town of Kensington, and we'll be using some of the artwork and some of the maps and prints to use in the museum, and that also will be open during the park events. And there's quite a few park events, opera in the park, a pumpkin roll that I was invited to recently, and I wasn't rolled. They just actually let me attend. And it's a jewel of a space. I've got a couple of hats that I wear. I'm a professor at Georgetown. I teach real estate development. They came and found me because of the gymnasium project. Furthermore, I only do one large development at a time. I mean, this will be my main focus. I run a construction company to pay the bills, building additions and various things under the name of a company called Washington Landmark Construction. This will be an LLC that will be named Warner, well, it's already named and created Warner Circle Mansion Condominiums LLC. We plan to use many of the materials that are shown as historical features in totality. The fact of the matter is Maryland Historical Trust, again, I've worked with them fairly closely. The application on this was over 1,000 pages for interior and exterior. We've moved it back to 350 pages for the exterior. I mean, there's many, many, many details, and we try to go through them very, very closely with the parties that are reviewing them. And there's not a right way to renovate exactly this building and repurpose it into homes without changing some aspects of the building, namely sound retention between the two units, floor and walls, for instance. And, life safety is incredibly important. We will need to make a small exterior change to create a second means of egress. There will be an elevator. There will be an ADA compliance space in at least one of the units. And we're trying to think a little bit into the future via adding electric car chargers, for instance. I think there will be 6 spaces that would have the ability to be an electric car charger. Also, I mean, getting into the details, but it would be also used as like visitor parking at the same time. Furthermore, there's talk about allowing us to use solar panel on the backside of the carriage house, which faces due south. And, it's pretty interesting that I'm a developer and, Brainard Warner was from R Street in Washington, D.C., and he moved up to build this incredible home that was way ahead of its time in the regard of, the air features and the ability to cool his family is one of the reasons he probably moved out to Kensington. And, allowing me to come in to be a developer and to turn the building into something that's going to last for another 100 years. And I'm going to emphasize that. The details that we're going to be putting into the building will still include slate, for instance, but it would include copper flashing. we are planning on keeping all of the historical windows on the first floor completely that aren't in bedrooms. There are egress needs for bedrooms, and that would really be more on the second floor and third floor. And we're working on elevations and so forth. You've seen some of the sketches. We've had 3 different architects working on sketches, and, they still are working with us. And, we're looking forward to finalizing that product. That's, I think.
Thank you. Any questions? Commissioner Burdett.
Can you speak to the hyphen and the materials? The sketches don't do it justice. It looks a little corporate looking.
Yeah.
And so what is the intent on the appearance of that? And knowing that inside that glass is a pretty plain wall, corridor wall.
Sure. It is obviously to connect the 2 buildings. We're still playing around with angles and straight glass enclosure. We believe that if you're looking from the outside in the courtyard through the glass hyphen, you'll be able to see the historic structure through that. We also have inherited drawings from a previous concept plan, which was to be, I think, back in the day, something for parks to use as administrative offices. And the hyphen is really more along the lines of coordinating what we saw previously and what was approved with what we're trying to do today. The material would mainly be anodized aluminum in all probability with glass. As little wood, on the outside in the sense of maintenance as possible.
I think the profile is going to be pretty critical
Sure.
on that. And one other thing I noticed, and this is on the interior, which really isn't us, but it might cause a problem, is in 2 units, you're showing spiral staircases going down.
I'm sorry, those have been taken out.
Good,
Yeah,
because
you're
they're not
welcome.
allowed anymore. Okay.
No, they were taken out. And I'm not sure if they're shown in the basement floor, but we do have duplexes specifically utilizing the lower level of the units on the first floor of the main home.
Okay, just so it's not the
Yeah.
spiral things. Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I do.
Commissioner Doman?
Yes, Commissioner Doman. I have to hand it to you. This is one really big undertaking, this project here. It's huge. I did go out to see the house. I did walk around the house. I did walk the grounds and walk the property. From what I could see by looking in the windows, there's a lot of deterioration of the inside. I mean, when you look in the main front door, the ceiling is falling down. It still has remnants of like an old hospital or something, used to be in the admissions office or something. You're gonna change a lot of the floor plan. How about, have you looked at, I assume you must have, but the structures of this? How is it framed? Is it balloon framing? Are you going to get into something that you can't see because you got siding on the outside, you got plaster on the inside? Do you know what your walls look like?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good question. The answer is I don't have X-ray vision. But with that said, I mean, we do plan to identify and repair and repurpose every square inch of the building. I would imagine there's a lot of dry rot behind some of the plaster, of course. We will be sistering most of the joists, not removing them if possible, to make ceilings level and walls level. Furthermore, we believe that if we are sistering all the exterior walls, we're going to create a significant, stronger building. We do plan to reuse all of the full siding, but remove it and specifically put in sheathing and so forth that is waterproof. Again, when it rains, we can't have people on the 3rd floor complaining to the people in the 2nd floor that their windows are closed and the water's coming through. Yeah, the envelope of the building will be fully reviewed as well. We do believe that the turret can be fully saved, the turret,
Oh, turret, yeah.
of the slate turret. I mean, I think it's in good shape. It's a shame that the slate needs to be redone so soon, primarily because of the flashing that's rusted, and that's where you're seeing some of the water getting into the building. But Parks have done a good job in the sense of maintaining it. For instance, the full ceiling that you saw in the front door that was, fallen through has been rectified in the sense of the leak that was above. And that's mainly maintenance. I mean, I'm sure it had something to do with a roof drain that was never cleaned prior to them taking ownership of the building.
Do you plan, if I read this correctly, you plan to refurbish the original windows on the first floor?
Yeah, that's right. And we've done that before at the gymnasium project, in which we take the windows out, we strip the windows, we repaint them 3 times. It should give us about a 25-year length of time of use of that window if it's done right. And then to maintain an energy conservation quotient, if you will, we would have a single pane of a Lexan on the inside that can be removed and cleaned and so forth. Those windows probably would not be operable.
Yeah, when I was walking around, the sills, I mean, a lot of the paint is peeled back. You have exposed wood. The water can get into the sills. Plus, some of the horizontal trim around is very badly deteriorated. But I guess you know all that. And
Yeah, no, I mean,
yeah.
in places it's worse. I mean, depending north side, south side of the building.
Is your intent to remove all the siding then and put up sheathing and then an insulation in your walls when you do that?
Yeah, these are all excellent questions. Specifically, our plan will be to remove the siding, to put a water.
Rain screen.
A moisture barrier that is breathable, that will be now between the siding and the sheathing itself. We don't know what the condition of the sheathing is, but presumably it's in fairly decent shape. Yeah, exactly.
You don't know. Well, in the write-up on it, when you're talking about the window or siding and shingles, I read this. I found it very interesting because I have done a lot of historic carpentry work. But some of the write-up is done in a first person, like I make them. Who wrote all this? Did you write this? Is this your?
Possibly. I mean, my staff and I have been working on this.
It's written in the first person, like I did this. Here's how I. Are you the person that is the individual that we're talking about?
I am.
Good. Okay. Well, you understand things very well. Okay. Very good.
Questions?
Thank you.
No, well,
Commissioner Galway.
Commissioner Galway, question about the HVAC equipment. With the peaked roofs that you have very little, if any, opportunity, it appears anyway, to put the condensing units and so forth on the roof. What, do you have a plan on how to hide that?
Oh, yeah, that's very important to us. I mean, we would like to have most, if not all, of the air conditioning units below grade. There is a mechanical vault that should be able to take, I'm guessing for the moment here, 8 of the, just stay with the mansion, which would be 15 units, but there won't be just 15 HVAC units, there'll probably be 18 HVAC units, and we will probably be using a heat pump system. There will be no gas to this building. For instance, the lower levels on the first floor, there are egressable windows that we will be creating areaways, and then in all probability, 1 per unit could be put into those spaces. Again, I mentioned the mechanical vault. The addition area, it has a grade change, which we will put the units themselves into the areaway of the lower levels. I wish I had an answer for every one of those. I mean, we do plan to use the highest efficiency technology. I mean, not but a Bosch system with all of the ductwork and so forth over bathrooms and kitchens, supplying the different spaces. There are cassette units we're going to be using in the ceilings and also wall units. But it is a very important aspect. We haven't got every note on the exterior survey of the land that we're supposedly controlling, if you will. If you can imagine a 6-foot barrier all around each building would constitute 2 of the lots, and then the third lot would be the full park itself. With that said, we will be working with the landscape architects to clearly create some sort of visible difference between where the units go and what the public will see.
Thank you.
Commissioner Pelletier?
I don't know, you're just talking about the land. Would you have enough land to do geothermal?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I have done geothermal in Bethesda previously. There is issues with that that run into expense.
Of
It
course.
also runs into how many wells would need to be drilled. And specifically, if you can imagine the drill bit going outside the 6-foot
Well,
piece.
that was my question, if you're
Yeah.
limited. Like you have, I see all this green space on the site plan, but I just wonder how much of it you would have access to for that. It would just be really nice to not see any condensers.
I like the idea, and
Yeah.
I've built houses where that is
I
the
know.
case.
Some bucks.
It's something that we can definitely look into. I mean, we're not using some person in a van in a pickup truck. We'll probably be using like a Harvey Hoddle, for instance. They're the ones who are looking at the project pretty closely. If there's a will, there's a way. I'm not sure if it is fully feasible.
Yeah. Okay, that was it.
Thank you.
I get one more question.
Commissioner Doman?
This is a little bit off of HPC, but you're going to make, or the proposal is 17, you call it market value condominiums in here. Has anybody approached you about making affordable housing tagged into this also, making a couple units also being affordable housing units? That's my question.
I'm not opposed to affordable housing, and I, in my past, worked for Manna, Arch Housing, Wish, when I worked for a large developer, and I brought that skill set to those projects. I'm not sure this is a very, very difficult project to say sorry to people that aren't as well off as myself. We're looking for a percentage of internal rate of return that justifies this project with my bank. And, it's getting harder and harder to justify projects like this with interest rates going north. I was hoping that they would remain the same today. But, the reality is it may not be until the end of September that we would be getting a building permit, for instance, and we're not sure of that. I mean, the units aren't incredibly overpriced, for instance. I mean, I do think that the community will be not ecstatic, but I mean, I have a pricing list if you were interested in looking at that. But, the fact of the matter is, they're units that are $400,000 to $700,000. It sounds like a lot of money, but to live in a mansion and to have a park as your view, as your, either, most of my clients are either empty nesters or just starting out. And it's a pretty neat mix, the old people meeting the new people, in the community. So I wish I had a better answer for that.
Thank you. If there are no more questions, if you could step back for a minute, maybe take a seat right there. We have two people who'd like to testify, Helen Wilkes and Scott Whipple. If you could come forward. Or maybe just one. Thank you. And if you could state your name for the record, that would be great. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Helen Wilkes, resident of the town of Kensington for 34 years, chair of the local advisory panel, and an architect who has lived and practiced out of my home all these years, raised with my husband, our 3 daughters there. And I feel very intimately involved with this site. I was on the Legacy Open Space Advisory Board, which was created around 2000, 2001, and specifically interested in the preservation of this historic property. So I've, together with residents of Kensington, been interested in seeing something happen there. I believe that it was acquired in 2005. The building has been empty since probably 2004, so it's nearly 20 years. And we have, as a community, Friends of Warner Circle, Jason Gerson, who's here tonight, is the head of that group. We have an executive committee that's had oversight, and we've activated the site as much as we can, mostly Jason running that aspect. And we've had opera on the back porch at least 3 times. That has been a wonderful way to activate the site, use the back side of the site for public use. And so I anticipate that there will be a lot of excitement when people actually start seeing activity to return this building to use. And what better use than to create condominiums which return it to residential use. So we're very excited about that. Some of us had the opportunity to, with Kurt, look at some of his projects that he did in the Forest Glen Seminary, and that the excitement started there because he's the real deal. He really cares about what he's doing, and he cares about materials, and he cares about historic preservation, and so we're very enthusiastic about the whole thing. In my report that I submitted after discussion with various people who've been involved with the site for a long time, I posed, I guess, some suggestions and some questions that were put forward, and you all have the report there. I'm not going to go through the whole report, but and a lot of them have been covered here in the discussion. The geothermal question, ideally that would be what we get, but I know that Kurt will be paying close attention to minimizing the impact on the site. You don't get to see many 360-degree sites like this. This is an unusual aspect to it. It really is a fishbowl. It's surrounded completely by residences, and those people in particular feel really engaged with what's going on there. And so it will always be seen and judged, I'm sure. And while everybody won't be pleased at all times, I think that really there will be a lot of enthusiasm for the improvements and the return to the community of this residence that really is very symbolic of what Brainerd Warner did. If you look at the plan for the town of Kensington, you see this on the map of Montgomery County, in fact, this little perfect oval, and see the idealized plan in the way that the streets circle that and emanate from the circle. It really is the symbolic, psychological heart of this garden suburb, and really exemplifies that idea that the house is an object in the landscape, and all the rest of the houses that surround it nestle into this greenscape and share a common landscape. And I only wish that Warner had made some provision that if it were to revert from residential use, that it would go become the town hall, as it were. I mean, wouldn't it be great to have that? But actually, that said, we're all very happy that this is going to be returned to residential use. The questions that we came up with, certainly the number of spaces we'd love to minimize to the extent possible. That's a zoning code question, but also some of us were concerned about the widening of the roadway and question whether it actually is necessary to widen the entire roadway all the way around the house to 20 feet to satisfy, why does a fire engine have to have 20 feet all around the perimeter? It's an issue of turnaround. You can create a hammerhead turnaround to satisfy that requirement for a fire engine to be able to turn around. So we'd like to think that those questions will be more fully explored so that we can minimize the paving on the site. We'd like to think that the idea of permeable pavers will be explored so that, again, keep the greenscape green as much as possible. And I just want to also add that the glass hyphen, I actually am kind of excited about that because from east to west, there's some great sunsets, and by the elevation on the site of that house, I imagine some beautiful sunsets that can be seen through the glass hyphen. I think that'll happen, so it's kind of exciting to anticipate that too. I think that's it. That's all I have to say, and
Thank you.
we're very glad.
Any questions from Ms. Wilkes? Commissioner Doman?
Yes. When I visited the area, obviously I come up with opinion, this is a beautiful place, a beautiful park. When I was there were people walking, people pushing baby buggies around, very nice. But you realize a lot of this is going to change when you start putting parking places in here, right?
Right.
So I assume you're aware your beautiful green area may not be quite as beautiful and green as you currently have it.
Sure. Well, and certainly, particularly on the east side, there's some concern. The residents there are particularly close to, and their view shed will change in particular. So certainly there is hope that there will be every effort made to minimize that impact. Green, adding green planting around it, or even depressing the parking there if possible to preserve the view of the house primarily. I mean, people who have been used to looking at the house for all these years don't want to see cars in front of the house, for sure. But I expect that Kurt will be sensitive to that, right? Okay. So, yeah, thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Wilkes? Okay, thank you. Scott, would you like to come forward, or do you? Now, Scott and I have a long history. He brought me onto this, and then he saw that I was here and said, I got to get out of here. So he
That's
immediately moved over to Parks.
That's not how it went at all.
Scott Whipple.
Scott Whipple,
with
Department of Parks,
Thank you.
Cultural Resources. I don't have any statement to make tonight. I'm just here to show support. We're thrilled that we found a sympathetic developer who's willing to take on this project, and we've been working really hard with him to get the project right. There's still refinements that need to be made that we're working through, but we're thrilled to be working through those trying to solve these problems that are outstanding. And I don't really have anything more to say. I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Any questions? Well, that was quick. Thank you. Thanks for coming up.
Don't be last, right?
Right. Okay, I think we're ready to begin our deliberations. If you'd like to come back here or stay there, whatever you prefer, probably better if you could come up here. And would anyone like to start off? Commissioner Burdett.
Well, I'm quite pleased that something's going to happen to this wonderful mansion and that it's going to be residential again. Because, again, if it couldn't be a town hall that everybody could get into, it might as well be used by as many people as possible. And I applaud your work. I mean, if you've worked at Forest Glen, then yes, you're the right guy to do this. Beautiful work over there. I do think you need to look at the detailing of the hyphen very carefully because you don't want it to look like a glass corporate or commercial building detailing. A little bit more finesse with that. And other than that, I was just wondering about the parking situation. This isn't anywhere near Metro, so people are going to need their vehicles. But perhaps there's a way to do some sunken parking so that it's not quite as visible between being partially sunken and partially landscaped, that it wouldn't be terribly obvious, because you've got to have it and you've got it in the right place. So I think that's just trying to minimize its appearance for the residents that are in the building and the residents across the street. And other than that, good luck. I look forward to whenever this thing gets finished. I look forward to seeing it, and I hope, again, like I said earlier to another group, invite us to the opening because we'd really love a tour of this place. Thanks.
Anyone else? Mr. Pelletier?
What was I going to ask?
No, we're not asking.
Oh, we're not asking questions.
No, we're not asking. We're beyond that.
Well, I worked with you, Carl, at Cunningham Quill. I don't know if we ever worked on a project together. You had worked on a few projects while I was there. I think you priced one of my jobs once, but we were always very impressed with your historic preservation, kind of like, keeping all the old stuff as much as you could. And I am really impressed with the National Park Seminary stuff. So I was actually really thrilled to see your name on this application because I think, this could be just super cool. I also was thinking maybe I got to get my name on a list to buy one of these condos. Yeah, it's really, really cool. And I know we're sort of supposed to be talking about your design, and I think so far it's pretty sympathetic. I think it blends right in. It's kind of nice that there were photos of the old edition that got torn down that was so horrendous, but yours is really nice. But it's a great juxtaposition between the two. I share Commissioner Burditt's concerns a little bit about the bigger elevation of the hyphen. I think to me, it's more about the module. Like right now, it looks a little bit like an office building, not on the short side, but on the back side. And I know it's just a sketch, so I assume that it will be worked out later on. And yeah, my only other concern is the HVAC equipment and how that's going to actually go down. The parking doesn't really bother me because right now there's so much paving up there as you drive around that I think if it was formalized in some way, right now it's just a bunch of, asphalt blobs sort of all over the place. That I think if it got nicely landscaped and nicely formalized with site walls and various things, I think it could be really nice. So this is really exciting. I have lived in this area for like over 40 years, and I never even knew this was here. And when I went over there, I grew up in Bethesda, and I'm like, well, I've never seen this before. So this is really, really cool. So anyway, wish you luck. Totally supportive of the design so far, and we look forward to seeing more.
Anyone else? Commissioner Galway.
Commissioner Galway. I think I'm going to go back to the equipment again, and I know you're trying to keep the units affordable and make the numbers work. I think there's a market for the geothermal. If you're talking somewhere between 1.5 to 2 dozen wells, based on just looking at the size of these units, I think that would be a wonderful opportunity to just demonstrate your sensitivity to the environment and saving energy and the whole energy story. Electrification, I agree with the idea of the heat pumps. I'm not trying to spend your money. But I think that, definitely due diligence on that and make sure that you can't do it before you give up on it.
Carl, can you turn on your microphone, please? Thank you.
I most definitely will investigate it deeply and make sure that I use a qualified HVAC company and investigate the differential between what we're planning and the geothermal. And I welcome that ability to see what the differential is and hand it over to HPC just to continue the conversation. I'm all for it.
Right.
I mean, really, truly. I mean, we're only here for a short period of time, and it's the best thing we possibly could do. However, if it's not feasible, it may not work, obviously. But thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks.
But you have my word that we're going to be looking into that further because it eliminates mechanical vaults and oddity and ostensibly even maintenance. So.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much. I'd just like to add, I think this project is large enough, and I think there are enough questions as it moves forward. If you'd like to do another preliminary, get our view, we usually don't do that, but I think if we all want this one to be perfect.
I agree.
So if you're interested in doing that, we would be amenable to that. But if you're comfortable moving ahead, that's great too.
I'll consult with HPC.
Yes,
and,
absolutely.
I think that's the path we're going down.
Okay.
The perfection path.
Thank you so much.
Good. All right, thanks.
Okay, next item on our agenda are historic preservation tax credits, route number 2.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. We have Group 2 of the calendar year 2022 tax credits. Group 2 includes 19 applications consisting of approximately $207,165.21 in eligible expenditures, and we're asking for your approval of these applications. Thank you.
Thank you. And my understanding, I believe, is that we hold all of them until we have them all in place, then we send them to the Department of Finance.
That is correct.
When we have all of them together at the end of the year. But we approve them as they come. So is there a motion to approve the current list?
Chair, I make a motion that we approve this current first.
Group 2.
Group 2 of, thank you. Group 2 of calendar year 2022. I think.
2023.
No, it says 2022.
22, okay,
Yeah.
great. Okay, is there a second?
It's Commissioner Haynes, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Do we have minutes from March 8? I have not had a chance to look at them because I was not there. Has anyone looked at them?
Chair, this is Commissioner Burdett, and I have read the minutes from March 8th, and I make the motion that we approve those minutes from
Thank
March
you.
8th.
Is there a second?
Commissioner Haynes, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you. Commission items. Just one thing, I think, might be others, but several of us looked at, I'll think of it here in a minute, solar panels on roofs in Tacoma Park. And we have guidance for this currently, but looking at projects that we've approved, we believe that we can refine that a little bit with some guidance that we would offer to staff. Is anyone else who is there, anything you'd like to add to that? Okay. So we will do that, and we will try to put something together in the next month or so. Is that reasonable? Yeah, next month or so, we'll put that together. Okay, any other commission items? Staff items?
No staff items.
We're adjourned. Thank you so much.